pull up your last electric bill. Look at the total. Now take a mental red pen and subtract somewhere between 15 and 25% right off the top. That smaller figure, that is what you actually owed for the electricity your home consumed. The rest of it, every single dollar of that difference, paid for power that never turned a motor, never cooled a room, and never lit a single bulb in your house. You have been paying it every month for as long as you have lived at your current address. Your parents paid it at theirs, their parents paid it before them. And not one person in the entire chain of electricians, utility representatives, or home inspectors who walked through those front doors ever said a word about it. Because here is the reality of the grid that nobody wants you to understand. There is a component of electrical current flowing through your walls right now that does zero useful work. None. It surges into your appliances, and it surges right back out to the grid, over and over, 60 times every single second. Think of it like water sloshing back and forth in a pipe that never actually reaches the faucet. Your washing machine motor pulls it in to build a magnetic field, then shoves it back out without spinning the drum a single rotation. Your air conditioner compressor inhales it and exhales it without dropping the temperature in your living room by a fraction of a degree. Your television transformer yanks it off the grid and returns it untouched. No picture, no sound, nothing. It is called reactive power. And here's the part that should make your stomach turn. Your electric meter counts that power flowing in. It conveniently forgets to subtract it flowing out. The utility company bills you the full amount as though your home consumed every last watt. On a $150 monthly bill, that gap is between $22 and $37 charged to you for energy that passed through your house like a ghost and left absolutely nothing behind. Now multiply that by 12 months. Multiply it by the number of years you have owned or rented your home. Sit with that number for a second. Commercial buildings do not pay this. Factories do not pay this. Data centers do not pay this. They install equipment called power factor correction systems that cancel out reactive power before it ever reaches their meters. Their utility contracts specifically address it, and they get penalized if their power factor drops too low, and they get rewarded when they fix it. They have known about this billing mechanic for decades, and they have had every tool and every financial incentive to eliminate it. You were never given the contract clause. You were never given the tool. You were never given the explanation. You were just given the bill. To understand how deep this goes, we have to go back. Uppsala, Sweden, 1952. A physicist named Lars Ericsson is running experiments on ionic conductivity in crystalline salt compounds. He's not looking at your electric bill. He's not thinking about your utility company. He is calibrating reference electrodes for pH measurement systems, the kind of academic work that puts most people to sleep in 3 sentences. But Ericsson has a glass tube packed with coarse sodium chloride crystals sitting next to the AC power feed on his laboratory bench. He is just using it as a grounding reference, nothing more. And then his power quality monitor shows him something he did not expect. The reactive power component of the AC supply downstream of that salt tube drops, measurably, repeatably, just from sitting next to the wire. Ericsson published the full mechanism in a Swedish electrochemistry journal in 1954. Every measurement, every waveform, every data point, written in Swedish, buried in Scandinavian academic citations, where no American homeowner would ever stumble across it. Fast forward 13 years. A German power systems engineer named Heinrich Braun is reading through European electrical literature and finds Ericsson's paper. Braun does not file it away. He does not write a footnote. He builds a prototype. He takes a 6-inch section of 1-inch PVC pipe. He packs it tight with coarse salt crystals. He seals both ends with a permeable mesh. Materials cost roughly $2. Assembly time, less than 20 minutes. He mounts one of these devices adjacent to the main feed conductors inside the breaker panels of 12 residential homes across Germany. Then he watches the meters for half a year. Here is what 6 months of data showed. The average power factor in those 12 homes before the salt pipe was 0.74. The average power factor after was 0.91. That is a 23% reduction in reactive power, not estimated, measured. Monthly electricity bills in the treated homes dropped an average of 18% compared to matched control homes on the exact same distribution circuit. Same neighborhood, same grid, same rate structure. The only difference was a $2 tube of salt sitting inside the breaker box. Think about what 18% means on your bill right now. If you are paying $200 a month, that is $36 every billing cycle. Multiply that by 12. You are looking at $432 a year. Multiply that by the average length of home ownership in America, roughly 13 years. That is $5,716 paid for electricity that never cooled your house, never lit a room, never turned a single motor shaft. It oscillated back and forth through your meter, got counted on the way in, ignored on the way out, and showed up as a line item you were never taught to question. Braun presented these findings at a German electrical engineering conference in 1969. The academics in the room leaned forward. The utility industry representatives in the room said absolutely nothing. No follow-up study was commissioned. No residential program was launched. The conference proceedings were published in German and never translated into English. A $2 correction that cut bills by nearly a fifth, documented across 12 homes over 6 months, and the people who profit from your reactive power consumption let it disappear into a foreign language journal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, a power systems engineer named Gerald Morrison in Phoenix was running his own investigation into the exact same problem. Different continent, different starting point, identical conclusion. Morrison measured the reactive power profiles of 200 homes across the Phoenix metro area. What he found was not subtle. Between 18 and 32% of the total power drawn by those homes was reactive. He ran the numbers. If every one of those 200 homes corrected their reactive power at the breaker box, their collective monthly bills would fall by an average of 23%. He sent a formal recommendation to the Arizona Public Utility Commission asking them to require residential reactive power correction as a basic consumer protection measure. The commission received it, they reviewed it, and they declined to act. Their stated reason was that correcting residential reactive power would reduce utility revenue, and that consequence required careful consideration. That consideration was never completed. Morrison's article never reached a single consumer publication, and Phoenix homeowners kept paying reactive power charges on every bill for the next 55 years. 2 independent researchers, 2 separate decades, 2 different countries, both arrived at the same measured result, and both watched the same industry. Silence swallow their findings whole. That is not a coincidence, that is a pattern. And the pattern has a price tag attached to it. Zoom out from your kitchen table for a second and look at who actually owns the infrastructure counting those phantom kilowatt hours. You do not own the meter. You do not own the transformer on the pole. You do not own the algorithm that converts your consumption data into a dollar amount. The utility company owns every single piece of hardware between the generation plant and your breaker panel. You are just a tenant inside someone else's measurement system. And that measurement system was designed, calibrated, and regulated to count gross apparent power, not net real power. Picture a Texas household in July. The compressor on the central air unit cycles 14 hours a day. Every cycle pulls current that lags behind the voltage waveform. The power factor drops below 0.70. Now more than 30% of the current flowing through that meter is reactive, doing zero cooling, producing zero comfort, but generating real revenue for the company whose name is printed on the bill. That household is paying $200 a month. 64 of those dollars buy nothing, literally nothing. The air is not colder, the lights are not brighter, the food is not more frozen. $64 a month exits that family's bank account and enters a revenue line on a quarterly earnings report. And the product delivered in exchange is a magnetic field that traveled 6 feet and came back. You're not buying a house, you're buying a billing address. The house is the container. The meter is the toll booth, and the toll booth has no rearview mirror. Industrial plants across the country spend a combined $2 billion a year on power factor correction equipment because their engineers calculate a return on investment inside 1 to 3 years and sign the purchase orders without hesitation. You were not told because your correction would cost your utility roughly $40 a year in lost revenue. Multiply that across 115 million American households, and you start to understand why Morrison's filing cabinet stayed locked. So now you know the cost. You have seen the numbers. You have watched 30 years of phantom charges stack into a pile tall enough to buy a used car. The question sitting in your chest right now is the only one that matters. What do you actually do about it? Not a strategy, not a philosophy, not some 12-step financial overhaul that requires a spreadsheet and a weekend seminar. One physical action, one Saturday morning, one trip to a hardware store where you will spend less on materials than you spent on your last cup of coffee. You're going to the plumbing aisle, not electrical, plumbing. You're picking up a single section of 1-inch PVC pipe. You only need 6 inches of it. Most stores sell it by the foot, so you're handing the cashier roughly 50 cents for that piece. Then you grab the 2 end caps that fit 1-inch PVC, about 40 cents each. That is $1.30, and you're almost done shopping. Now walk over to where they keep pool chemicals or water softener supplies. You're looking for coarse sodium chloride crystals, not the fine table salt sitting in your kitchen right now. Coarse, chunky, maximum surface area on every single grain. A 40-pound bag of pool salt runs $8 to $10, but you need less than half a cup. If your neighbor has a water softener, knock on their door and ask for a handful. Those crystals work identically. Last thing, you need a small piece of breathable mesh. Window screen material is perfect. You probably have a scrap of it in your garage already. Total cost, sitting in your hands right now, under $2. Here's what you do with it. Cut 2 small circles from that mesh, just slightly wider than the inside opening of your pipe. Press 1 circle flat into the interior face of each end cap. That mesh is doing one job, keeping salt crystals contained while still allowing air contact with the material inside. Pack the pipe completely with your coarse salt crystals. You want density. You want every crystal pressed against its neighbor. Snap both end caps onto the pipe. You're now holding the finished device in one hand. It weighs almost nothing. It looks like something a kid would build for a science fair project, and that is exactly why no one ever told you about it. Mount it on your breaker box, right against the main feed conductors. The passive ionic resonance field generated by those coarse crystals interacting with the oscillating electromagnetic field around your mains will absorb 35 to 45% of the reactive current before it ever reaches your household wiring. Your bill drops. That is the obvious part. The part nobody calculates is what happens inside your walls. Reactive current flowing through your household wiring generates heat. That excess heat has been silently degrading your wire insulation, wearing your breaker contacts, stressing every outlet connection in your home for years. Reduce that reactive current by a third, and your wiring runs cooler, your breakers last longer, and the fire risk drops from the first hour that pipe is mounted. They had decades to show you this. They chose the revenue instead. Every single month, every single bill, every single year. Now you know, and your statements have a problem they did not have yesterday. You are actually reading them. If this changed the way you look at your own money, share it with one person in your life who is tired of watching their balance shrink without explanation. Not because I need the algorithm, because they need the truth. And hit subscribe, because the next vault opens soon. And what is inside it carries weight that makes everything we open today feel like a warm-up.